Well, Razorback fans, a lot of you are hoping that this Razorback basketball season gets turned around. A lot of games left, but if they're going to turn it around, who are the players they have to rely on? Well, let's talk about it on today's Locked On Razorbacks podcast.
You are Locked On Razorbacks, your daily podcast on the Arkansas Razorbacks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome into Locked On Razorbacks podcast. I am your host, John Nabors. I am also the host of Inside Arkansas Live, which you can catch every weekday starting at noon on Inside Arkansas and InsideArkansas.com. It's a Monday afternoon, so you know what that means. It's a Pot at the Palace edition of Locked On Razorbacks, and joining us now, of course, is Curtis Wilkerson of Inside Arkansas. And Curtis, I know you have talked ad nauseum about this game and that loss against Florida, but we are turning the page and moving forward. But just where it currently stands right now for the Razorbacks, the question becomes, can they still turn it around? They still got 15 games left. Do you, in your mind and hardest of hearts, think that this Razorback basketball team can still turn it around, still be an NCAA tournament team, and maybe even make some noise in the NCAA tournament?
Do I think that it's going to happen? I mean, based on what I've seen, the first three SEC games, probably not, because they're kind of trending in the wrong direction here. But can they do it? Absolutely. Are they talented enough to do it? Absolutely. And, I think we're kind of getting to that point where we're in must-win territory going into this LSU game, but that doesn't mean it's a must-win for 15 straight games. Just, you need to reverse course here and get the trajectory going. Like you mentioned, they've got 15 games left. I think a good barometer for Arkansas, if they want to be serious about getting in the NCAA tournament, get above 500 for those final 15 games, go 8-7. I don't think that's too much to ask here. They have, not that there's a such thing as a favorable stretch in this league that's just, man, oh man, it's loaded. But these next four games really stand out as an opportunity for Arkansas to do a pretty decent amount of climbing out of an early hole that they've dug here. Will they do that? Time will tell, but they do have the opportunities. Now it's about just figuring some things out and starting to take advantage.
Well, I know that it's about, of course, players, coaching, everything has to come together. But really at this point in time, I think Hog fans and most people are looking for players that can be counted on consistently. I always think back to these Eric Musselman teams, because I know it's kind of the most recent, but I'm in the first year that they made the Elite Eight run. It's like you knew that Moses Moody was going to give you 15 to 20 points. You knew in the next year that J.D. Notte was going to give you this. You knew that an Anthony Black or whoever was going to give it. You just felt like there was always guys or just maybe in some cases one guy you could count on to give you something. I don't feel like you've had really that this year. Aidoo Thiero's been really good at times. Boogie Fland's been good at times. But who do you think is the most important player that right now starting, you have to be able to have some consistency, counting on them to get certain numbers and certain stats moving forward if this team's going to turn it around?
Yeah, I think there are probably two names that immediately jump to mind with me. You mentioned Aidoo Thiero, and I feel like I can kind of rely on him. Like for the most part, I know what I'm going to get out of him. But the two guys I feel like really have to be good and have to be better for Arkansas if they're going to turn this thing around. It's the inside-outside punch. Like it's Boogie Fland at the point guard position, and it's Jonas Aidoo inside. We can do the Nelly Davis thing all day long, but at this point, I think I'm kind of moving on from that in terms of, he's got to click and be one of the better players on the team if Arkansas is going to figure it out. No, I think it's the guy who has been your best player a majority of the season, who's really, really labored here in the start of SEC play, who needs to get it going. We've said throughout the entire year, like as Boogie goes, Arkansas goes. He hasn't gone very far in SEC play, and neither has Arkansas. The 13.7 points per game in these three league games is fine. But buddy, he's shooting 29% from the field, 25% from three. And his assist numbers are down, cut nearly in half from where they were at throughout the early portions of the season. Arkansas really needs to get him going. He needs to be more efficient. He is the table setter. He is the playmaker, the initiator of the offense. They've got to have a good version of Boogie Fland if all the other pieces are going to kind of fall into place. And then I look at Jonas Aidoo. Arkansas right now, if it's not in transition, they're not getting anything easy on the offensive end of the floor. I think a way that they can kind of work some things in the half court is to get Jonas Aidoo more involved in the offense. In 3 games, he's taken 8 shots. That's kind of crazy to me. And he's 6 of those 8. And here's the thing. He's not necessarily known as a go-to scorer. Like he's not Hunter Dickinson on the block in there, but he's a guy who's done it at a high level in the SEC. He scored double digits, for Tennessee last season. And, it's a deal where against Florida, they get it inside to him a couple times early. He gets a couple post scores in the first 3 minutes of the game. He doesn't get a touch inside the arc for about 30 minutes of basketball. And then you get him 2 in a row and he scores twice in a row in the second half. And Arkansas goes on a little bit of a run. So I think a more concerted effort to get him involved around the block that forces the defense to collapse a little bit. And then maybe you can start skipping it out, getting some more clean catch and shoot looks for your shooters, if we can even call these guys that at this point, but some higher percentage shots. So yeah, Boogie Fland, Jonas, Aidoo, I think those 2 guys are the keys to getting this thing turned around, especially offensively for Arkansas.
Well, also, I want to ask about and talk about a player that, we have seen a lot here at Arkansas, and it's been Trevon Brazile. He's a guy that dealt with injury, and this is his 3rd year at Arkansas. And the fact that he was in the transfer portal, decided to come back, people had a mixed reaction to that. And I was honestly curious, at least at the time, of like, okay, so what role is he going to play on this team? I know he's capable, freak athlete, and we've seen some good times on him, but what type of role is he going to play? I've been really impressed by his energy and hustle, but also his efficiency. I felt like so many times last year, if he got the ball just with any sort of split second of an open 3, he was going to take it. And this year, he really hasn't done a whole lot of that. It just seems like he has a role, even though it may be minor. But what do you make of the game he's had so far this year? And is there anything that can be expected or developed in his role for this team? Or is this just, hey, go in, get you 20 some odd minutes, get a few stats here and there and call it good?
I think that what we're seeing is, Trevon has really embraced what the coaches have asked him to do, which is, man, you got to be more aggressive. You got to be willing to play physical. You got to be willing to get on the floor, do the dirty work, compete on the backboards. And he's done all those things. And now I feel like it's time for him to be rewarded. I think Trevon should be starting. You've lost 3 SEC games in a row. Cal has been flirting with the idea of, playing a bigger lineup or switching things up. You got to try to make some kind of tweaks there. I think the easy answer for me is to insert him and his energy that should be contagious onto the floor. And if they're going to do that, I think he's earned the right to be a little bit more aggressive with his offense. If he's playing defense, if he's blocking shots, if he's rebounding, he should have a longer leash in terms of going out and trying to hunt some of your own offense. And it's not like they're getting it from anywhere else. I mean, they're averaging 60.3 points per game in league play so far. And you look at Trevon, all the good things he's done, he's taken 6 shots through 3 games. And a lot of those have been like tip-in opportunities. Now he's got to the foul line 10 times. So some of that he's just getting fouled and going to the charity stripe. But I think he can help Arkansas scoring a little bit. I wish they would look for him some on some lob opportunities, on pick and rolls. And if you're going to insert him into the lineup, and you've got Aidoo at the 5, why not have a situation where Aidoo is kind of hanging around in that dunker spot where if DJ drives, you draw help, he dumps it off, and you get some easy baskets, and let Trevon be that guy who's doing all the dribble handoffs and setting those ball screens, because we know he can pick and pop and knock down the set shot 3. And I think that needs to be maybe a bigger part of his game. It doesn't need to be the only part, because like you said, he got just the slightest amount of airspace and he was pulling it last year. And now he's kind of gone the polar opposite of that. Find a good middle ground. I would love to see Trevon taking 2 to 3 3-point attempts per game, especially if he's playing that 4 spot where they need to be able to space it a little bit.
We're going to talk a little bit about the SEC and is it going to be sustainable and how good it is here on the other side of the break. So stay with us here on the Locked On Razorbacks podcast. All right, Razorback fans, this is a message from the new sponsor of Intuit TurboTax. Taxes was dealing with piles of paperwork and frustrating forms, and then waiting and wondering and worrying if you're ever going to get the money back. Well, now Taxes is easily uploading your forms to a TurboTax expert who's matched to your unique tax situation. An expert who's backed by the latest technology, which cross-checks millions of data points for 100% accuracy. While they work on your taxes, you get real-time updates on their progress, and you get most of the money back, guaranteed. And all you get to go about your day. So no stressing, no worrying, no waiting. Now this is Taxes. It's Intuit TurboTax. Get an expert now on TurboTax.com. Only available on TurboTax live full service. Real-time updates only in iOS mobile app. See guaranteed details at TurboTax.com/guarantees. We're also brought to you by our friends over at Game Time. Everyone loves going to live events, whether it's sports, music, theater, comedy. I know one of my favorite memories was attending concerts last year. Got to do a lot of those, as well as the energy and excitement at football games, basketball games. It's all been unforgettable. But now Game Time has made it even easier to get your tickets for your favorite events. It's a new feature called with Game Time Picks. This feature filters out all the fluff and shows you only the incredible deals that you can choose from to get great seats. So you don't have to waste your time and money searching through all the times that you got to find through thousands of tickets. You get the best deal guaranteed right up front. Recently, I know I and many of you were looking at some tickets for some upcoming games, and you found those amazing deals where you get to see the view of your seat with the Game Time app. The Super Deal was particularly impressive, offering great seats at unbeatable prices. Plus, with the app's all-in pricing, it shows the total cost up front with no surprise fees at checkout. The best part, when I won, I got paid instantly. It's as simple as that. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for great prices and $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? It's game time. Continuing on our discussion here on the Locked On Razorbacks podcast, the Pot at the Palace edition with Curtis Wilkerson. Now, Curtis, we know that Arkansas obviously has some work to do in the SEC, but the SEC is a monster. It's as good as the conference has ever been at this point in time. A lot of great teams that could win a national championship. I believe they have the SEC has not won one since Kentucky back in 2012. So it's been a while. I'll start with this. Do you believe the national champion of college basketball this year comes from the SEC?
Yeah, why not? I mean, as I look at it, as much as I hate to admit it, Auburn, Alabama, Tennessee, Florida. I mean, there's a good handful of teams right there that I feel good about. Their opportunities to go do it. And I'm not sure that I could pluck as many from the rest of the country that I feel like are legitimate national title contenders as I could just straight out of the SEC. So sure, why not?
Yeah, I think so too. I think this is going to be the year because if they don't do it, I don't know what else it's going to take.
True.
But I think the question too that people will have is this is all great. I know the SEC's come a long way and it's really competitive. You got some really good coaches. You got some high talent. But is it just a shot in the pan, one type of year, or at least a small era? Or is this going to continue on? Because the SEC has always been known for great football, great baseball, great track, great softball, great all these sports, even great women's basketball for the most part. But men's basketball has always been the one that's lacking. It's there now. But do you see with the coaches that are in place, with the programs that are in place and all the futures, do you see the SEC continuing to be a very dominant and very high level SEC men's basketball conference for years to come?
I don't see why not. I mean, I don't know that it will be just as top to bottom deep as it is this year. It's kind of insane. And like you look at some of these teams here, towards the bottom and you wonder like, what's the long-term staying power for a South Carolina or a Vanderbilt, even with their new coach, but we understand NIL and everything like that. LSU, Oklahoma, some of those schools that, got off to hot starts this season. Now they're coming back down to earth. Georgia, even look how good they are. Mike White really going to keep that thing rolling this long? Maybe. I don't know. We'll see. But it's pretty fascinating because I look at the player rankings for the class of 2025 over at 24/7 Sports. And for the longest or for the last several years, a majority of those guys are going to the SEC. Like they're getting the top end high school talent in. Well, if you go look right now of the guys who are committed in the top 25 for next year's class, only 4 are going to the SEC. 2 of them are going to Arkansas. 2 of them are going to Kentucky. Now, there's a handful of other guys that are still uncommitted. I'm sure that number will continue to grow. So that drops down a little bit. So you think about maybe, okay, the top end, like NBA first round pick level talent might not be as high, but we know the game is changing and the SEC has more NIL than any other league out there. And the transfer portal is where it's at. And I'm seeing these teams start to embrace it and build these good rosters. And it's easy to turn things around. It's easy to fill the holes that you have to fill in basketball, comparatively speaking to football. You might just need 2 or 3 guys in basketball as opposed to 25 or however many Arkansas is getting in football this year. So I do think there's something to be said for it. And then the coaching, man. I mean, just, Bruce Pearl, Nate Oates, Todd Golden emerging now, Rick Barnes. I mean, you go on and on and on in this league, and you got really, really good coaches too. So I think there's kind of been a shift in the power dynamic in the country when it comes to basketball, where the SEC was on the rise, but the Big 12 kind of stuck the claim to being the top basketball conference in the nation. I think the SEC has passed them. I don't see any reason why it's going to change. I do think that this year might be a little bit of an outlier in terms of all 16 teams being really, really good.
So I'll end with this one then. For the next 3 years, let's say that 3 different SEC teams win the national championship. If you were to make a bet on who those 3 teams and coaches would be to win the SEC, not the SEC title, but the national title, who would be those 3 coaches and programs over the next 3 years?
Oh man. Again, as much as I hate to say it, Nate Oates in Alabama, like it's hard not to start there with what he's done. And now it's translated to a Final Four. So he's already kind of crossed that barrier and has got a really good team, a deep team. And they continue to recruit at such a high level. What Bruce Pearl has done this year. And I do think, say what you want about the man, but he's one of the best coaches in the country. They've got something that's really cooking over there. And then if I had to pick another one, I mean, I would love to say John Calipari in Arkansas. How awesome would that be? But I can't justify going there given how this thing is going right now. It would be awesome if that's the case, but you never know where he could go. Man, Todd Golden, it's just assuming he can keep his job, because I know he's got some stuff going on, behind the scenes, the Title IX investigation and all that. But he is very analytical, very smart. His X's and O's are great. Now he's recruiting at a really, really high level too. And we know what Florida is capable of as a basketball program. So if I had to pick a third, I would probably go there slightly over Tennessee, which is, I mean, they continue to have such a strong program at the top of the league every year, but like Rick Barnes, they made it to the Elite Eight last year, but he still hasn't quite escaped those allegations just yet. So I don't know if I can pick him for a national title guy.
Yeah, no matter what, for Razorback fans, it's going to be miserable whoever wins a national championship in the SEC, and it's not Arkansas. So, but it just shows you how good the conference is and how great a coaching it is. But it should be fun to see these last 15 games the rest of the way for the entire conference. But it's Curtis Wilkerson of Inside Arkansas. You can catch his podcast, A Pod at the Palace, as well as all the great content over there at Inside Arkansas. And Curtis, as always, man, we appreciate it. We'll catch up with you next week with the Pod at the Palace edition of Locked On Razorbacks.
Sounds good. Looking forward to it.